A big part of achieving financial freedom is having the right mindset about money. If you don't think about money in a way that aligns with your financial goals, you will find it difficult to succeed. That's why on this episode of the podcast, I talk with financial advisor Amy Cook about what she calls your money narrative and how the right one can help you achieve your financial goals and ultimately financial freedom. My guest today is Amy Cook, who is the founder and financial advisor at Maven Lane Financial Group. Amy's career spans over 20 years in financial services, transitioning to financial advising in 2009. She is the author of the Amazon bestseller Your Money Narrative, which delves into how personal experiences shape financial behaviors and decisions. As Amy worked on her own money narrative, she helped her clients to do the same with a mission to build lasting legacies through effective financial decision making and strategies. Welcome to the show, Amy.
Thank you, Steve. It's good to be here.
Yeah, so we're going to talk today about money narratives. So why don't we start out with what's a money narrative?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, so money narratives, money stories are basically things that we form typically early in life, ideas and thoughts around money or anything else, but in this case, we're talking about money that
Mhm.
we might carry through into our adult lives, and our decisions sometimes are coming from these places of when we were young and we formed an idea or belief, and some of those money narratives might serve us and some of them may not.
Okay. So these are how your viewpoints towards money or your mindset when you think about money.
Yeah, so it could be fear around money or fear around certain types of investments or fear around spending money or maybe the opposite, spending too much. And, a lot of families don't really talk about money. So as little kids, we sort of glean what we see around us and we form some ideas and just sort of run with it.
Mhm. Well, in talking to other folks about this type of thing, I think that these narratives tend to fall in one of two groups, which is a scarcity mindset and um, a surplus or this mindset. You either think there's not enough money, or you think there's plenty of money, and you don't worry about it, you just spend it. So you get your, I guess, your spendthrifts and your cheapskates, but two very different mindsets. Would you say?
Yeah, that's very true, and a lot of that is, generational too. I
Hmm.
mean, if we look at the Depression era babies and the scarcity thinking around that, and it was real. I mean, it's not made up. I mean, those were hard times in our country, and a lot of that then passed on. I remember my grandmother, reusing little pieces of foil and things, and everything was about not being wasteful, and so there is a generational piece tied to that and kind of what is passed down to the next generation.
Hmm. Yeah, as a boomer myself and child of a depression baby, yeah, it's that mindset, and I've seen it growing up. If you can't finish your meal, your mother would say, "Well, just eat the meat. Eat that because that's the most
Mhm.
expensive part of
Right,
the meal."
right.
So, in talking to other folks that grew up with depression era parents, that was sort of a common thread where you have this because you grew up in the depression, you have this mindset of this scarcity mindset about money that yes can absolutely influence you in all sorts of decisions that you make. You're worried that there's not going to be enough money.
Right, and then you can carry that when there's more than enough money, not knowing when enough is enough and when to stop. I mean, I've had clients who've had so much money, but coming from that mindset, they're afraid to spend any money on
Mm.
themselves. Or there's also other emotions that come into play, like guilt or shame around buying things or having things that aren't for, let's say, your family or for the right need, versus a want. So there's lots of different stories that can come into play there.
Yeah. It's sort of a bit of guilt, I guess, that comes from your parents didn't have. Sort of the reverse of parents don't want their children to have it better than they did. The children feeling a bit guilty for having it better than their parents did. So yeah, that can certainly come into play. So these money mindsets, these money narratives, can really influence and shape our financial decisions throughout life, can't they? Especially when whether it's a short term savings goal, like maybe college for the kids or buying a house, or a long term goal like retirement, right?
Absolutely. And I think the key is really just looking at it. If there's things in your life that aren't working, you know, maybe there's a reason for that. It's not necessarily just the same bad luck over and over. If, you continue making the same decisions, there might be something else that's sort of guiding those decisions that you're not really looking at. So really the whole point is just to start thinking about it. Like why am I so afraid of the stock market, or why am I so afraid of real estate, or whatever it may be? And look back, and a lot of times these stories are things that were formed. I mean, if you really think about it and start talking about it with people, you say, "Oh yeah, I remember that as a kid." And those are those little things that you carry with you and you don't really think about, and they can really drive some big decisions in your life.
Mhm. And I would think that a scarcity mindset would really interfere with any time of retirement planning because you tend to be living in the now. Is there going to be enough money to pay the bills or maybe a little savings account? And it can create, I would think, fear of putting money aside for retirement, something that's basically money that's going to be out of reach for several decades, right?
Well, a lot of times people with the scarcity mindset, they may save too much.
Oh,
And again, afraid to spend anything on themselves. So I think that there's a balance with financial planning. It's not just, getting a budget together to where you never get to do anything you want ever again. It's, you're putting money into the right places, or the essential places that you need to put that money into. And then that frees you up to be able to do more of what you want to do, and, basically live the life you want to live.
absolutely. So, these mindset. Now we talked about how the scarcity mindset can affect, uh, these decisions in retirement and everything. What about the other end of the spectrum where you have this surplus mindset about money? How can that affect decisions for long term savings goals like retirement?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of that, where people spend to whatever they make.
Mhm.
There's no paycheck left over at the end of the month, right? And a lot of that can come from that, I deserve it, or, I work hard, I'm going to do this for myself, when you can't afford to do it. So we've got a lot of credit card debt in this country. I don't think a lot of people realize how much it costs them to have that, to be paying off things that they don't even remember buying.
Mhm.
So it really, I think on either side of the spectrum, it comes down to habits, and we can form new habits. Awareness, is the first step in saying, this isn't working, um, and making some changes, and that's where those narratives can come into play. I mean, my family went through a really hard financial time when I was little, about 7, and they lost our house, our family home, and I was just scared to death and all it. But what I was really scared about was seeing my dad stressed out, and my
Mhm.
mom, and everything that it was creating. And in my little head, I was just a little kid. It really wasn't about the money. And it really wasn't about the money. It was about the people that I loved, and seeing all this going on, and the uncertainty that surrounded that. And in my mind, it was, I'm going to work hard because money solves this problem. Now, money would have solved that short term problem that they had, but I didn't know how much money, or what the circumstances were behind what was going on. So kind of just formed these, just keep working beliefs, and go, 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 make more money. And that's not really the answer. It was getting to the core of the emotion that it's really about, the people that you love and care about, and planning for things that are meaningful to you, and for the people that you love and the legacy that you want to create.
Mhm. So, what are some of the most common money narratives or beliefs that you find tend to hold people back from achieving financial security, especially for things like retirement?
So it could be fear of, investing, that the stock market's going to go down to zero. What if I lose everything? And if we look at that rationally, every single company would have to go bankrupt for that to happen. I mean, I really hope that that doesn't happen. If it does, we've got far, far bigger problems. Or it could be beliefs around what you owe your kids. Let's say, a college education, because you might have one spouse who went to really nice school, parents paid for everything, and another one that had to work their way through school. And you kind of go, well, this was what my parents did for me, so I owe it to my kids to do the same, even if you can't afford it. So sometimes these decisions that are sort of obligatory, or just, out of, again, those emotions of guilt, or, just going through the motions, can really hurt us in the long term, for financial independence and retirement, whatever the goals are.
Mhm. So we tend to inherit, like we were talking about the children of depression babies, we tend to inherit to some extent the money narrative of our parents. This is what their narrative, and the children tend to carry that on and don't necessarily break out of that cycle.
I think so. I mean, we inherit some of it. And there's a lot of families where they don't talk about money, or it's, if you talk about money, it's very bad. And it's like, why? It's just
Mhm.
money. It's really just money. And it's like, if you talk about it, you're bragging. Or if you're going through struggles, then that's something to be embarrassed about.
Mhm.
Money holds a lot of interesting emotions for a lot of us, and I think the more we talk about it and kind of bust through that, it's just money. We can change our habits. We can make, we can improve our situation. It's a slow go. You've just got to, make little tweaks and changes, and over time it really starts to work out. I mean, it's just not an overnight thing.
Yeah. Well, I would think that you described the couple where the one person went to a expensive school because the parents paid for it all, and the other one had to work their way through. Have you found that the very different money mindsets that have been inherited from the parents can cause conflict in a married couple when they have very different money narratives and trying to resolve those two?
Well, I mean, opposites attract. So, that's, it's typical that, you're going to have different upbringings anyways, even if you were the same type of person or the same personality. And so we all kind of have our own set of circumstances. But I think that just talking about it, is a really helpful piece to just be like, how do you feel about this? And then think about the why behind it. Because if it's not making sense and you can't afford something, then you've got to look at why you feel that you must do it. And if it's something that you want to work towards, and it can be at the top of your list, as long as everybody's on the same page. But I'm pretty sure that money's the top, if not one of the top, reasons cited for divorce. So
Mhm.
it's obviously an issue.
No, I'm just wondering how much that comes from each spouse having a different money narrative, and even with communication, because communication can help. It's certainly important to talk about it, where people can think about things rationally, but oftentimes emotions get in the way because these narratives are so ingrained. One
Oh, for
spouse is so
sure.
worried about money or having enough, or is a spendthrift, or that they're afraid to put money aside for retirement on a regular basis, or they have very different risk tolerances.
That's true too. And for some people, it's like they think about retirement. I mean, for those that are wise enough to start early, it's a long ways away.
Hmm.
And but time goes by really quickly. Although when you're 20, it's hard to see 59, or 65, whatever the age is, it just seems like forever.
Hmm.
But I think, having those conversations as early as possible
Hmm.
is ideal because, otherwise you get married and then all of a sudden you realize, oh, this person's a spendthrift. I'm not, want to save every time I make. And that, can cause a lot of conflict in a marriage. And then there's, some negotiation there to find a balance that everyone's happy with.
Right. So this inability or difficulty with communicating this, and you're right. I hear this from talking to several folks that talking about money is just considered taboo, or you don't talk about it, or you're afraid to talk about it. Uh, but aside from, what are some of the other narratives or beliefs that tend to hold people back?
So a lot of times people get really attached to their company and their company's stock, let's say. So here in the Silicon Valley where I am, there's a lot of people who work in tech,
Hmm.
great companies, but they will sign on or, get their employment offer and there will be a large amount of stock attached to that. And then now you have, a paycheck and your investable assets that are kind of both tied to the same place. Now, some of that you can't control because that's how they keep you there. But some of it you can, and you can look at diversifying out so that you're not just, so exposed to a single company. But a lot of times the narrative is, that belief in that company, which is amazing. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But then saying, I'm going to hold all of this because there's nothing better out there. Like this is the best company, the best stock. And it's unnecessary risk. Um, it can be the best company, but is it worth it? Would it, for something to happen and have that nest egg, get blown apart a bit?
Yeah, you get comfortable with where you are, and it can be very difficult to move on to make that decision. And there are risks attendant to changing jobs to a new job. Maybe it'll work out, maybe it won't. But if that other employer may have a better program, offer a 401k. Not all companies do. In Silicon Valley, as I understand it, in the tech sector, it's fairly common as a benefit to offer stock options.
Mhm.
But there are other things, like I said, IRAs, 401ks. I don't know how many companies necessarily offer pensions anymore, but that you're right. That sort of fear or too much comfort in where you are, or inertia, to take that leap to go somewhere else, which might be a better financial benefit.
But just diversifying. And
Mhm.
also it's, not understanding how it all works because uh there's a lot of rules around, disposing of those things or diversifying, selling, holding, and the periods of time around all of that. So I think just getting some help and guidance is really important, along with you've got to make sure your estate planning is intact. You've got to make sure that you've got your tax planning and you've got the financial advisor. So there's a lot to think about, but it's worth it to build that team and have that support because you're working in something totally different. Your specialty is, whatever that job title is,
Mhm.
it's, why try to go into these other areas when there's people out there that can help you do it.
Mhm. So, wh- what are some practical steps per se for reshaping a negative money narrative? indicated these problems people have, this inertia, uh, too much comfort where they are, risk tolerances being low. Uh, what? How do you help people build a healthier financial future and a healthier money narrative?
Well, I mean, I think financial planning is key. I've got a lot of different stories in the book, and the book is really comprised of fictional stories about fictional people and different, relatable situations or dilemmas, if you will, and then kind of suggestions at the end of what they could start to think about. But I think that talking about it, being aware of it is the first step, and just kind of raising the question of, why do I feel like I can't talk? Even let's say I just said that and you say, oh no way, we're not going to talk about money. Why? Where's that coming from? It's just money, you know? So I think that just starting to really question anything that just jumps into your head and says, no, 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 don't do that. That's bad. Why? Just make sure it's aligned with your goals, because if you're not moving towards your goals in the way that you would like, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, you're probably carrying something into the picture that you need to question and maybe, revise a bit.
Mhm. So they may have a particular goal in mind. This is definitely what they want, but when you talk to them about the steps they need to take to make that happen, they become resistant because of these money narratives.
Well, I think I mean, it's human nature to fall back into habits. And
Mhm.
that's where, again, the accountability is really important, because you got to know that about yourself. I mean, I like talking about money, so money's, and I've worked through a lot of my own money narratives. But like, if, when it comes to exercise and, all of the different health pieces, like, I kind of need somebody kicking me a bit, because I don't fully understand it all, so I'll avoid it. And a lot of people do that with money. They'll just kind of push it to the side, and then, a year goes by and you go, well, gee, I didn't really make a lot of headway here.
Mhm.
um, and if you know that, get some help, because it's an accountability partner too, to
Mhm.
check in. Financial planning it's dynamic, it keeps going, life changes, jobs change, circumstances change, and you just kind of keep going and moving towards your goals slowly but surely. There really, that I know of, are not any overnight cures for this stuff, and we're always kind of looking at our picture and looking at ourselves and working on it.
So having someone, it can be difficult. You have a money coach, as it were, someone that provides that accountability. As you said, like having a financial planner that you meet with quarterly, every 6 months, or once a year, or whatever's appropriate. To all right, how we doing? I know, what are you doing? Are we on the track we should be? So if you need to make a course correction, you know that certainly helps. Having someone that, oh, I better get this done because Amy's going to want to know what I'm up to. So
Yeah,
that's
and I
part of
think
the
that
services you
that's
provide.
yeah, and I think that's where financial planning really comes into play, because there's a lot of advisors who manage investments, and I do that too, but the planning is where you are able to create a roadmap of sorts, so that when you're making those decisions and you're taking more out of your paycheck to go towards the retirement plan, or you're putting more aside over here, buying this insurance or whatever, you know why you're doing it. Like, there's a gap, and you're filling a gap, and you have your goals here at the end. It's really hard when you look at a bunch of accounts, and it may seem like a lot of money, but a lot of people don't know if it's enough. Is it going to sustain my lifestyle as I'm living right now? And that's where planning can really shine a light on that, and
Mhm,
clearly illustrate, like, hey, this looks great, or there's a gap here, and we got to figure out how to solve for that.
mhm. And not only the accountability, but I would think that at some point you meet with them and say, "Hey, our investments are doing well. You've accumulated this amount of assets," and it can create some positive feedback and be encouraging, especially like you mentioned when you're in your 20s and retirement is some 40 years away. It can be difficult, but if you can see as you move along, yeah, you're moving towards that goal. You have
Mhm.
your assets are growing and they become more encouraged, and that helps them to be motivated to stay with the plan, right?
Absolutely. And sometimes there's some steps back, but when you're if someone's starting out and there's debt and those things really drag you down. So sometimes there's, some steps to take to kind of get you to ground zero where you start building and seeing, the reward, if you will, of, putting these things in place. But I think the misnomer that out there is just, if I talk to an advisor, they're going to tell me I can't do any of the things that I enjoy doing. And it's really quite the opposite. I mean, if there's a gap in a plan and a client needs more money for a goal, like I'm not going to go into the budget and tell them what thing has to change. It's up to the individual to look at it and say, well, this is really important to me. I'm not giving that up. And this is not that important to me. And that might be the thing that's really important to me. So we're all different, but it's just, and we're all dealing with the same stuff in life in general. um and it's just, making progress and having the right people that are staying on top of the rules and the laws and what they can do and what benefits are out there for them, and working towards it that way.
And having a financial advisor that can give them accurate advice.
Mhm.
One of the biggest dangers these days to doctors, lawyers, accountants, financial planners, whatever, is the internet.
Mhm.
I don't know how many times, and I'm sure you've heard it. People come into my office and say, "Well, I read on the internet that dot dot dot," and maybe what they're it's like going to WebMD. All of a sudden, you've got cancer, because and now you're
Yeah.
worried. But by going to a financial planner who's going, in this instance, who's going to give them and say, "Wait a minute, it's not cancer. You're okay. You're going to be fine," or and help them with those fears and with that risk tolerance to say, "Look, it's okay. This particular stock or bond or fund or whatever it is meets your risk tolerance. It's going to be okay if you put your money in there," and give them that reassurance and get over that fear, right?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And a lot of times it's just if we've never done something or maybe someone we knew had a bad experience with something
Mhm.
similar, it can be another narrative where you go, "Oh, don't ever do this with your money." And it's like you're taking an isolated incident and making it just this broad brushed rule. And I think that an advisor can really shed some light on some of those things if you're aware of them or
Mhm.
if they pick up on them and kind of talk through it a bit. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, having an advisor who's really an advisor,
Mhm.
and again, your estate planning attorney, your tax planning professional. I mean, those are all really important pieces. And with the laws changing so quickly, I mean, don't you want someone who's on top of it? I mean,
Mhm.
I would, my CPA, I wouldn't even attempt to do my own. I mean, he's staying on top of all that, thank
Right.
God. So yeah, there's a lot of benefit to hiring someone who knows what they're doing, who really wants to help, you know?
Yeah. And it can overcome the fear and the hesitation and everything else with what they're doing. So, what resources or tools do you recommend for people looking into shifting their money mindset and improving their retirement planning strategies?
Well, I've got some stuff on my website, or I've got a website for the book, yourmoneynarrative.com. I've got a couple of free checklists there that you can download, and then some other ones available that are cover different life changes, job changes, divorce, death, things, purchasing property, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think, podcasts like this are really good tools, and having a good, uh, money management tool is also can be really valuable,
Mm-hmm.
in addition to the team. But yeah, I have tons of calculators and basic tools on my website. So there's yourmoneynarrative.com and then mavenlanefinancialgroup.com. They, you can check it out.
Okay, well, I'll definitely leave some links in the show notes to that. So, folks out there, you're listening in the car or while you're exercising in the gym or whatever, don't worry. It's all right there in the show notes. You can go back and get this information and maybe reach out to Amy, and uh, she may be able to help you, or at the very least, get her book and read through that. You said there are a lot of good stories. You do it in sort of a storytelling format.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to be unique when there's thousands and thousands of financial books that come out every year. But in my experience in working with hundreds and hundreds of clients over the years, a lot of people don't want to get into just the technical side of financial planning. They just want to understand, where they're at, what they're doing, and just, basic terms. And I find that stories are relatable. If you can read a story and it reminds you of your mother, your brother, yourself, or someone, it's a lot easier to connect to those story to what's going on. So I did the book in that format where it's almost like a bunch of little fictional short stories.
Well, storytelling is has definitely been seen as being the one of the best ways to relate information because people love stories,
Mhm.
and I think that folks, listeners out there, should be encouraged by this. Is that look, this isn't some boring investment book. You sit down and talk about you know rates of returns and
Mhm.
PE ratios and all that stuff. These are some good, relatable stories that you can read to help you understand these concepts, and it'll be a much easier gateway into this world of financial planning, right?
Yeah, I'd like to think. I mean, the book's gotten some nice feedback, and again, there's some really great basic guidance for people that are just getting started or going through different transitions and things.
Mhm.
And I think the stories are pretty good. But yeah, it's on Amazon. There's the audio version, the hard copy, Kindle. It's all out there.
Yeah, and I'll leave links to that as well, folks. So if you want to get her book and start reading it, we're going into the fall, and you're going to want to think, hey, let's make 2025 the year. And maybe you start now, start reading this stuff, maybe reach out to a financial planner before the busy holidays and everything, and really get that started. And you'll feel better going into the next year, knowing that you're uh, that much closer to financial freedom. So great having you on your show, Amy. Lots of great information about money narratives and mindsets and how they influence us, either help us or hold us back. So I encourage listeners to look at the resources in the show notes and check out Amy and see if she can help you. So thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Steve. And the only thing that I would leave everyone with is, if you have 20 things you want to get done, just start with a couple. If you get a couple done this year, you get a couple done next year, it's progress. But
Absolutely.
thank you for having me on the show. It was fun.
All right.